of Universal City, Texas. It is Tuesday, September 20th, 2022, and I'll call this meeting to order at 6:31 p.m. and call for Quorum Check.
Mayor Pro Tem Neville.
Present.
Councilmember Byrd.
Here.
Councilmember Goolsby.
Here.
Councilmember Najarian.
Here.
Councilmember Shelby.
Present.
Councilmember Vaughan.
Here.
Quorum is present, we shall proceed, and the invocation this evening will be given by Mayor Pro Tem Neville. I'll lead us in the pledges afterwards, so would everyone please stand.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we know and hope we understand that human life has its limitations. However, we acknowledge that even so, life is worth living. We have come to the end of one fiscal year and now set the stage for a new one to begin. Help us as we deliberate those things necessary to make our city, Universal City, still one in which people want to live, to work, to eat, and to enjoy their leisure. To do so, we need those critical services that ensure the safety of all who are here. Fully manned public safety forces. We need streets repairs so all our citizens, wherever they reside, may have safe travel. Paraphrasing the author of the book of Ecclesiastes, there is a time to heal and a time to build up, a time to speak and a time to keep silence. In our actions tonight, let us also keep in mind our neighbors who are in the military and every branch of service, keeping our country safe from aggression. Be with the people of Ukraine and other countries facing destruction from those who would deny them a peaceful homeland. Father, we thank those who come and make their voices heard at our meeting. And at the end of each day, may we hear the words from Matthew 25:23. Well done, good and faithful servant. Amen.
Amen.
I
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. On the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Well, thank you everyone for coming this evening for our final meeting in September. We're close to closing out the fiscal year, so this is going to be very interesting. We have lots of interesting items on the agenda this evening, so thank you for coming. We really appreciate your attendance. The first item we have on the agenda this evening is tab number 8, which is to consider the minutes of Tuesday's August 30th, 2022 City Council special meeting and the Tuesday, September 6th, 2022 regular meeting. I need a motion.
I move to approve with the changes that I called in. Some changes that I called in.
Wait, what did you change?
His vote was reflected as a yes vote on the tax rate, and it was a no vote.
Thank you.
And Mr. Neville made some
And there were some
grammatical
grammatical changes as well by it.
But no shifty stuff in Councilmember Shelby.
No.
I have your name respelled.
Okay, that works.
So are you seconding now?
I'll second, sir. Yes,
All
sir.
right. We have a motion and a second to the minutes. And again, it takes a lot to put these minutes together, so I hope that you appreciate that. And sometimes there are some typos and things and everything else working fine, but the substance of the meeting is pretty much there. So if there are no other comments, let's call for the vote then, please.
Councilmember Shelby.
Aye.
Councilmember Goolsby.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Neville.
Aye.
Councilmember Byrd.
Aye.
Councilmember Najarian.
Aye.
Councilmember Vaughan.
Aye.
Okay, that motion passes. We'll proceed now to our next item, which is citizens to be heard. As you can see on the board, it's a time to provide citizens a chance to address council on issues or concerns. It's forward only, no council action is going to be taken as a result of the discussions. And I ask that you try to limit your minutes as much as you can, because we do have quite a few items on the agenda this evening. We do have 4 people that have signed up this evening, and I'll call you up in order that you signed up. And our first individual, and I'm sorry, is it Janice? Janice, and who lives on Clear Oak? Just give your last name. Is it Hughes?
Yeah, I won't take nearly my 3 minutes. I'm about 100 hours short, and I'm glad the dollars are working out. I just wanted to say thank you for all the work you've done. I was not able to be at the last meeting. I have everything, kind of prepared for tonight, then I found out I'm 100 hours late. But I want to thank you. I understand it was a very long meeting, and there was a lot of hard work done. and a lot of compromising done, and I thank you for realizing that we in the United States, in Universal City, are of various backgrounds and various financial situations, and thank you for working.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it. Okay, next individual to sign up the evening is Mr. Nathan Whitson. Mr. Whitson. Give us your name and address to the record, please.
My name is Nathan Whitson. I live at 117 Foxglove Lane. For those who do not know me, I know a few of you have known me since I was probably 9 or 10 years old. For those who don't know me, I've lived here for most of my life. Recently, I've been working as a political strategist and consultant for candidates and current sitting members of our government, like Ron DeSantis, Chip Roy, Rand Paul, Henry Cuellar. I have a lot of experience with certain very hot topics, you would say. I was recently informed that there is was labeled as a wish list for the city's budget, which included hiring a police investigator, a firefighter, and it was somebody to work for the city administration, based on the fact that there's a few folks in this audience tonight who have really decided to take up a lot of the city's time, a lot of the city employees' time, basically wasting it and our tax dollars on things that are, meaningless at the end of the day, and they just, at the end of the day, they're wanting to make y'all's lives and our lives as difficult as possible. I bring this up because I am aware that there is a lot of folks on the council that are up in the air about whether or not to add these positions, and I'm going to focus, because of time constraints, on the law enforcement itself. I don't understand how saving $1. So I was told that taxes are currently at the budget proposed going to be lowered by $3 per month, but in order to fill all 3 of these positions, it will cost us $1.80 a month as citizens. So you're saving $1.20 each month. I feel, you can't even buy food off the dollar menu at McDonald's anymore for that price. So I don't really understand what the big deal is on $1.20. I don't understand why this council would vote to not fully staff our law enforcement. One of the things that I've always appreciated about this community is that it has been a safe community. But statistically speaking, Byrd County itself is not a safe county. And we are in Byrd County. Currently, not currently, but in 2019, the violent crime rate in the county was 708.5 violent crimes committed per 100,000 residents. Today we have 2 million residents, roughly, within the county. That equates out to, based on the 2019 statistics, 14,170 violent crimes within the county, and it's risen since then. While we may be a nice, peaceful town as it is right now, eventually that will spill over into our jurisdiction. And if y'all are not willing to staff the law enforcement needs that we have in this town, I sincerely wonder whether or not you hold our best interests at heart as city councilmen, or if you're just up here for your own personal gain and to gain a social circle. I find it to be very disappointing, and I hope that y'all do the right thing and staff the people that we need in this town to make sure that we continue to grow the way we need to grow without sacrificing our safety and security at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Okay. Individual Senate this evening, Mr. Rubal.
Don't worry about it. I'll try to solve this problem. So basically, I'd like to talk about 2 tabs on the agenda tonight. One has to deal with the salary increases. I'd like to remind council that a 2.5% increase in salary actually increases salaries
We can't hear
We
you.
need you in the mic, Mr. Rudolph, because of the,
I'm sorry.
we needed to pick up, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to emphasize that a 2.5% increase is actually becomes an exponential increase in salaries, which means that at the end of 20 years, there's a 60% increase in salaries just by that 2.5% increase. And if we extend it to 30, okay, it would be actually more than twice the original salary. Okay, so basically, if we look at percentages, and I don't care what salary number you begin to start with, in 10 years, essentially there would be an increase of 28%, in 20 years, 63.9%. 63.9% just by this 2.5% increase. That results in a cumulative cost for the city of $4.7 million. Now, translating that into the yearly cost for salary, that essentially is three additional officers paid generously at $61,000, $3.69 at $50,000, and to fund other staff at $46,000 down to 6 at $30,000 per year staffing. Okay, so basically your decision tonight will depend upon a 2.5% increase or recognize the requirements that have been proposed at the end of the last council meeting, even by the city manager, that there are critical needs that we have to face. The next item has to deal with the $25,000 in tuition waivers. I point out to the city that city employees make on a median. That means half of them make $50,000 or more, make $50,000 or less. The median income of citizens of Universal City is $31,000. Now, if we translate that, that means 55% of our residents make less than $34,000, and only one city employee makes less than that amount. Okay? So just look at the numbers and justify whether the citizens need to pay for tuition for their kids or our fairly well salaried employees can't make it up. They make the numbers up for themselves. And again, I give you the graphic of the distribution of salaries. Finally, essentially the promotion expenses. I'm hitting this one more time. Every year, the city commits $100,000 to that, supposedly to protect itself from expenses from the Snowfest. If the Snowfest goes belly up for some reason type thing, the city falls for that. Well, where did the money go over these periods of time? How come it can't be kept in a reserve and we just get nailed one time until it's needed? Okay, that doesn't make any sense for the proposed use of the money. I thank you for your time, and unfortunately, I won't be here to stay tonight, so forgive me for that.
Thanks, Mr. Wilk. Okay, the last individual signed up this evening is Brenda Mills.
Good evening. Thank you for your service. And I live in Meadowland, and I just would appreciate, and I guess thank you is in order in that we're not going to be raising our taxes as a retired teacher living on retired teacher's income that has not been raised. I just wanted to say I appreciate that that was not raised anymore, and I do want, of course, the police officers and firemen and the appropriate staffing to be paid well, like the gentleman was pointing out, that I think the budget was lowered to where we were not going to have a tax raise, if I understand that correctly. And I just appreciate that and hope that's what I understood. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay. All right. Now, those are the individuals that signed up this evening. Would anybody else like to address council that did not get a chance to fill out the form? Okay, now let's press on. Let's move on. The next two items are going to be no tabs. There's going to be a couple of public hearings which will actually go right then into tab number B. So what we'll do is a public hearing on open and on PC 556, ZC 229. Excuse me. It's a request for a zone change for an approximately 21.140 acre tract located at 11469 Old Seguin Road from C4 General Commercial to PUD 2022-101 District per zoning ordinance 581. What I'll ask is I'll turn this over to the city manager for comments, and then if he has any other presentations, and then I'll open the public hearing so you all can comment based on what you're hearing this evening. So, Ms. Turner.
Thank you, Mayor. Michael's here, and he's going to guide you through these the two public hearings and then tab B, since they're all related.
Right.
So I'll go ahead and let Michael give you an overview of the zoning requests that we have here this evening.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Before we get into the specifics of this project, I'd like to just do an overview and some highlights, high points regarding planning.
We need a little
We
more
need you to speak
information.
up, Michael.
Okay. Maybe I should put two.
Or hold it.
Sure, we can give you two.
That one's probably better.
Not two?
No, it'll,
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay.
there we go.
Okay, so I just want to touch on some highlights, high points regarding plan unit developments. Just to recap, a plan unit development provides for more flexibility to allow a higher and better use on a specific property. And then there's a difference between a PUD plan and a construction plan. So I think there's a little bit of confusion on that. Basically, a plan unit development set of plans that you have before you tonight is for zoning purposes versus construction plans, which obviously are for building purposes and have much more detail. This is a pretty thick packet, primarily because of the details that they provided for the landscape plan. But in general, we asked for some details, but nothing to the level that a set of construction plans requires. So tonight we have an applicant. This is the first PUD that has actually gotten to this stage in town. It's a mixed use commercial development. It's located at 11469 Old Seguin Road, which is really FM 1976, across from the Hop and See gas station. Backs up to the railroad tracks, vacant tract, about 21 acres. What they're requesting for tonight are two things. One is a zone change from C4 General Commercial to Plan Unit Development, in this case PUD 2022-101, and then also the approval of the PUD preliminary and final plans. They did go before a Plan Commission, received unanimous recommendation for approval. The other thing that was approved at Plan Commission was the plat of subdivision, both preliminary and final plats. So specifically for this project, it's 21 acres. They're proposing 11 lots, a minimum of 1 acre per lot, 85% maximum impervious coverage. We did run this by Public Works to make sure that we have adequate capacity for stormwater, to accommodate the stormwater that would run off from this development when it's fully built out. That is not an issue. We do have adequate capacity. As I mentioned, it's a mixed commercial proposal, retail, offices, warehousing, and construction, sales, and services. It's important to note that the way this property is currently zoned is C4, and they could by right go in and provide warehousing, construction, sales, and services. What we did was we approached them to try to work with them to provide, again, maximize the highest and best use of this property. So potentially they could put some retail on the corners, some other types of uses that would include restaurants, retail sales, financial services, healthcare offices, commercial daycare, and then automotive-related uses. However, the caveat with auto-related uses is that it cannot be more than 33% of the total PUD site. We didn't want to see, that with a repeat from 23 years ago on that site itself, but automotive-related uses does make sense to a certain extent. They can also provide for some convenient storage, like life storage or public space, but that cannot exceed more than 50% of the total site. We're allowing for a 10-foot fence maximum. Any storage or outdoor storage that occurs needs to be screened from the public view shed. They can provide a sign, but it can't be more than 12 feet in height, measured from the street level. And parking. So we did work with the applicant regarding parking. There is a schematic or a general template for a type of business that would go in there with office space and other uses within that building itself. It does provide for adequate parking. However, we do have a trigger mechanism in the ordinance itself that would allow for city staff, to identify whether or not additional parking is needed based on the use, which might be more intensive, and they would be required to provide additional parking spaces at the rear of the property. That is an issue that we've had in some locations in the North Lake Business Park, so we wanted to make sure that we provided a mechanism for staff to more easily provide for the necessary parking. Curb cuts, they're requesting 4 curb cuts on FM 1976. They have to get the approval from TxDOT. They're also requesting a curb cut on Old Cimarron, and they need to get the approval from Converse. I'll let the applicant talk about the status of those discussions with each of those entities. And then lastly, they are putting in, they're going to generate and establish CCNRs for the overall development. They will be consistent with the PUD ordinance itself. They may be more restrictive. Yes, sir.
What's a CCNR?
So it's the covenants, conditions, and restrictions.
Thank you.
You'll also note that there is a outstanding staff comment letter. We have about 5 or 6 comments within that. Again, that goes back to the PUD plan versus the construction plans. They already did address the fire concerns, the other comments outside of the plat of subdivision comments, which they will have to rectify before we record the plat. Those will be taken care of in the construction set. Approval standards. The overarching PUD ordinance in our zoning code requires a set of standards. The applicant did address each of those standards, and those are included in your packet. We did send out 33 legal notices to property owners within 200 feet. To this point, we received 2 letters in return that were objecting to the proposed PUD. The concerns raised were noise, increased traffic, view shed, because right now it's just an empty field, and then property values may be negatively impacted according to this individual. Again, the applicant is here to answer any questions, as well as myself.
Okay. Would you like to make a presentation right now before I open up the public hearing?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Clay Huddleston. I work for,
You can each have one, or you can each have one. It's up to you. You can talk loud, you can stand here.
All right,
All right,
I get it. I'm an old former teacher, so I can get real loud. So, my name is Clay Huddleston. I work for AIC Holdings, who is the parent company that's developing this site. Jack Landau here is our developing partner. So we're going to tag team any questions that you might have. I have a bit of a presentation here I can walk you through, or actually I'll probably let Jack walk you through it. And then we're happy to answer any questions that you might have.
All right, the way it's going to work is we'll listen to you, then I'll open up the public hearing.
Okay.
And then after the public hearing, then both of them, then we'll address it where council has a chance to talk to you.
Very good. Thank you, sir.
I'm sure y'all probably remember this from a couple months ago.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about this. Same site, obviously. Same site plan as last time. We've adjusted it for staff comments. And so the only real changes to it is we've shifted some sites around to allow for that drainage that comes from across the street to flow through the site better. And we needed to, at the back of each site, put more paving down so that cars and trucks can get into the street. But otherwise, it's the same building standard we spoke about a few months ago. Architectural elevations, we have corrected it this time for U panel instead of R panel on the front. I know that Councilman Goolsby wanted to make sure of that. And we've also, so in order to comply with non-monotonous standards, we've devised a few conceptual elevations for this to kind of keep the soul of the building the same, but allow for it to not just be one gray metal building after another. For the front facade, we're going to do a combination of wainscot, some fiberboard panel. We've worked out some different color schemes and some different roof lines that still match with Universal City's building guidelines. For the gates that show onto the frontage road, we have, this is the gate we're proposing, the fence and gate combo we're proposing using. It's a welded wire that has been coated a couple of times in both, it's been galvanized and then I believe dipped in vinyl coating. We're going to 10 feet with it. It's a no-climb fence that provides good security and looks and good look. And this is our development team that most of everyone on this list is local to the greater San Antonio area. So, I guess now,
I'll just add some comments. And I'm not local to San Antonio, unfortunately. I'm a Fort Worth guy, but I feel like we've got some very similar values. And just for anybody here who's listening, I want to just kind of point out that the concept of this site plan, I know the City Council is apprised of this, but the concept of this site plan is that we've identified a need for local, smaller, individual proprietorships who need a small footprint of warehouse, and these are 12,000-foot buildings with a portion of office in them, and then some interior warehousing, but also the key component for these folks is a storage in the back, and that might be your electrician who needs to store some work vehicles in the back, or that might be a plumber who needs to store some plumbing materials in the back. But in speaking with our leasing representatives down here in San Antonio and just knowing the market, we own several other buildings in this market and are active in this market. This is something that really hits home for a lot of tenants that are looking for space, and I think that we, in partnership with Universal City, have a great opportunity to provide this to local businesses. So, thank you very much.
Okay, here's the procedure we'll do this evening now. Is I'll open up the public hearing in a minute. Anyone that wants to comment on it certainly is welcome to. And when we close that, we'll go into the next public hearing, which is, the first one's for a zoning change, the next is to an ordinance for the PUD. And then it opens up to tab D, where then council will have a chance to talk to staff and or the developers on what they want. So that's the way we do it. So I'll open up the public hearing now at 6:59. And so would anyone like to address council on this particular issue? They have presented to us before, and just which is what we do routinely now, is to allow potential developers to come and talk to us and get the feedback from council. And we gave them some feedback, and then they went to the P&Z, and it was approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission. So, anybody would like to address council on this issue? Okay, well then I'll just close the public hearing at 1 minute later then, and we'll move into the next public hearing, which is basically the same thing, but this time it is to approve a PUD preliminary plan for those 21.4 acres, and it's for zoning ordinance 581. So I'll go ahead and open up the public hearing on that one as well. Anyone want to discuss this proposed PUD? Okay. Again, this is our procedure, so I appreciate that. And if there's no comments, then I'll go ahead and close that public hearing again. Then we'll move on to tab number D. This would be the opportunity then for council to discuss this issue as well. So it's to discuss and to consider ordinance 581-W-PUD 2022-101. It's an ordinance of the City Council of the University of Texas, amending the zoning map of the City of Universal City for an approximately 21.140 acre property located southeast of the intersection of FM Highway 1976, Gibbsboro Road, and Old Cimarron Trail, rezoning said property from C4 General Commercial District to PUD 2022-101 District, generally for mixed use, including commercial, retail, office, and adopting the PUD final plan related to PUD 2022-101, providing for severability, providing for the publication of the caption of this ordinance, and establishing an effective date. This will be the first reading on this issue. So let me open it up now to council. If you want any questions from staff and or our team here, let's go. Let's start with Mr. Najarian.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question for you right after that, and then for Michael real quick. I really don't have a question. It's more of a comment, and I remember when this was first brought up to us, that parcel of land is just kind of sitting there. We went over all types of ideas. You've got a lot of feedback. It looks like you've addressed this. We wanted more detail, and my iPad keeps going up because there's so much detail here, and I'm not making light of that. It's just that we really appreciate the amount of effort you put in here. I love the planning you have for this. As far as I'm concerned, fits in with everything that I was concerned with, and I appreciate you listening to the council and their feedback. And Michael, for you, just real quickly, one of the big questions that came up because of the fact that we have the community across the street there, we were talking about noise factor. We were talking about specifically manufacturing, use for manufacturing. With the PUD, I guess what I'm trying to say is there's a big difference to me between manufacturing of metals where it's going to be something banging all day and major manufacturer to say somebody who's making t-shirts and has a printing press in the back. I want to be able, the PUD allows for that but not the other, or can you expand on that?
Sure, so if you look at our use table in the zoning code, it breaks it down by civic, residential, commercial, and then industrial uses. Heavy industrial will not be allowed here. So that last table of uses will not be allowed. If you look at these, we recreated the table to allow for this site, this project specifically, and it details what types of uses are allowed. So printing for t-shirts, things of that nature, yes. Heavy manufacturing will not be allowed. Warehousing is the better definition.
That's all. Thank you very much.
Ms. Goolsby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When we, Michael, this one's for you. When we pass a PUD zoning district, that falls on all these individual pieces of property.
Yes, it does.
But it sounds like we're giving them freedom on some of the corner lots, or every lot.
Every lot. So if you look at that use table, it shows permitted on about 98% of them.
The design standards that they've set up are, somewhat specific, but I mean, they give the designers guidelines. Where does the design professional find PUD zoning 2022-0101? Where do I find that? Or where does that design professional find that?
Sure. So the ordinance will be available to anyone who requests it. We'll have to think about how we can make that more available to the public in general. It's just hard to find a lot of stuff. We have a very large, I see Kim raising her hand.
So we're going through a zone change request, so eventually the map that we have will be updated as well, and the online version of it will say PUD, whatever, numbers 2022-101 district. And typically what you would see is if somebody went there and they clicked on that one, these general uses should pop up, just like it does on our regular zoning.
Okay, good.
So it'll be out there for people to view, it's just it won't be out right away because it takes time to update the Esri system.
Wes needs to work longer hours.
In addition to that, we also have the architectural design standards ordinance that was approved a couple of years ago.
C4 is what it's currently zoned.
Correct.
What's my maximum height in a C4?
35 feet.
And what did we max this height at? Did we keep it at
35 feet.
Okay. So we didn't affect anybody's future ability for their view corridors.
No, the view shed,
View
it
shed.
will be different because
It's not a tree
right now.
Yes.
There will be buildings across the street.
It was not a parkland.
It was not.
And there's two view sheds you have to remember. There's the one from FM 1976, and then there's the one from the train tracks in FM 78. From the train tracks in FM 78, the way the topography of the property is and the natural growth that they have at the back, it won't be visible from FM 78 at all. So the view shed only on the entrance side will be visible. The yards in the back will not be visible.
I mean, I remember when they built Sunrise Canyon Apartments, it was a bad day for a lot of people. I understand. We're saying we're capping on with 85% maximum impervious coverage.
Yes.
Where's all that water going?
You can see that it's got a little bit of topo on there. It goes in that drainage channel. If you're looking to your right there, it goes into there, which then goes underneath the railroad tracks, and it's tied into the central watershed.
Okay, we have plenty of capacity.
Yeah, they'll be doing a little bit of improvement. There's plenty of, you can see it's almost like a bowl down there that can capture all that water.
Okay, so we're not looking to flood people downstream.
No, the actual railroad tracks, there's a pipe there, and it acts as a detention itself.
Okay.
There's only so much water can go through that pipe.
And when I was looking at the site plan, we've got pavement up front, then that's number one. Number two is parking areas, and number three is chip seal. Chip seal is the majority of the land across the back. Does that carry a 100% pervious, or is that considered impervious? Where are we at with chip seal on that?
So that's pervious.
It's considered
Yes.
pervious. Okay. Because what I'm just wanting to make sure everybody's aware of is that it is the back half, while it is not asphalt, it's not concrete, it is base oiled with aggregate.
The water will still seep through.
So water still goes through, right?
Just not at the rate that we just had.
I'm just making sure that we've got that accounted.
Yeah.
Because I kept looking for 15% landscaping, and I was like, that's 8. And so I assumed we had, that was way up there. Kudos, thank y'all for listening to what we had to say up here. I really appreciate it. It was nice to open these, see variation, to see color options, to see all those things provided. So thank y'all very much.
Well, I'd like to touch back on the pervious and impervious. The calculations that they provide, I think they're 80%, 85%. That accounts for that chip seal is considered impervious in their calculation count because there's a large floodplain area to that southeast, or I think that's southeast area that takes up probably a quarter to a third of that property. So that is impervious, obviously, and will remain so for the most part unless they get a floodplain development permit.
Okay, but y'all are, I know that I have put in a project here before, and I have had to do a square footage calculation, and was extremely frustrated and very grateful for the assistance that was provided. So I know that y'all do take that into account.
Absolutely.
Now for y'all, as I'm going, we get a heavy rain and I'm seeing the water rush my chip seal off. How are you keeping the chip seal from now getting into my floodplain? I've got basically at the ranch, I've got a really nice creek with a little road goes over it, but I have some of the most expensive pretty rocks downstream in the creek. So are you mitigating that somehow?
It is not a concern that's been brought up yet.
Okay.
There are a few ways to mitigate that at the back not with silt fencing, but with more permanent silt fencing style options. The only thing we can't do is we can't burn it up because we're trying to get...
You're trying to get water out. You don't want to make a pond on your... So I understand. I just want to make sure that we don't look up in 10 years and that is full of chip seal.
Yeah. And I'll address that as well. So between, I know you can't see the numbers on the plan, but maybe on your notes you're able to see between lots 7 and 8 we have that large drainage channel. So a lot of the watershed is being diverted into that channel as we talked about. And then if you'll look at this image up here on the, I'll call it the plan southeast, all right, on the right side, lower right side of the plan. That's that floodplain that we're talking about. And obviously that is where a lot of water will accumulate naturally due to the natural topography of the site. And as Michael mentioned, we don't have any plans to chip seal that section. That will be pervious per the calculations that we mentioned as well. So we think that most of this is mitigated, to answer your question, by just the natural topography and then the drainage channel.
So, I'm looking at you, do you have any concerns about chip seal?
No, we've had a lot of discussion on this. The chip seal will be tacked, so it will be in place. The only time you get chip seal rocks that are loose is when vehicles pivot on it, and you'll get some loose ones in there. But there won't be a wash of rock washing off of it. And what little bit that does, that drain, that's an interceptor drain that's in between the lots, will capture a lot of it. It's no different than you see on the road.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Anyone else? Thanks for the presentation again. It was very accessible. Yes, Mr. Boyd.
Sorry, thank you, Mr. Mayor. A little bit of concern about Gibbs Sprawl Road being only 2 lanes, 1 in each direction, and people slowing down to make the turn into the facility, people making the turns out of the facility. What are the potential traffic impacts, not only for the residents, but just from a safety perspective of those cars that are turning onto and turning off of Gibbs Sprawl Road into the facility?
We haven't touched on TxDOT, so this is a good opportunity.
So we've run this by TxDOT for their manual of how you do curb cuts and speeds and all that. So the main thing that we've hit is with the speed limit that is on Gibbs Ball Road, where TxDOT has given the design standards for how often you need to have a curb cut, the size and width of the curb cut to allow for people to slow down, turn in and out. We also think a lot of people will be exiting through the old Cimarron way. Just it's an easier turn out. It'll take you up to a light. You get a protected turn. That's probably how I would leave. But TxDOT has had no issues with these 4 curb cuts so far. We had 2 conference calls with them, and we've put the plat before them to give so they can give their approval on the 4 curb cuts. We're actually have spaced them further apart than the TxDOT manual says we have to allow for. Just your concern there.
Yeah, I guess what I'm thinking of is 2 cars are driving on a road and 1 car is getting ready to, the lead car is slowing down to turn in.
Mm-hmm.
Most people are driving faster than they should be along that road, or somebody pulling out and trying to make a right turn onto Gibbs Sprawl Road in front of another car that's coming down there faster than they should be coming down there. That was my only concern, is that it's a 2-lane road,
right?
And the potential for for accidents along there.
So, when speaking with TxDOT, they were uninterested in a turn lane. I think it's probably because they just finished redoing that road. And
Well, when they redid the road, they put 5-foot width curbs on each side, or what do you call it? Shoulders on each side. So there is a little bit of an area for acceleration and deceleration. It's not much. I'm guessing really what TxDOT is thinking about is that light is going to be stopping a lot of traffic. And so by the time they accelerate and get to wherever they're going, they're probably not going as fast as we think they will.
Yeah, okay, yeah. And just to maybe paraphrase or rephrase Jack's comments there, based on the speed limit, so again, we've talked with TxDOT, based on the speed limit, there is a set amount of, all right, your curb cut has to be this far from this curb cut, and obviously the higher the speed is, the further that distance has to be, and we have actually made our curb cuts further than their recommendation, so they haven't given us any comments or concerns on that front.
And there are businesses on the other side of that old Cimarron Trail that have a similar situation.
Yeah.
So if Converse hasn't been having significant issues with exactly that concern, I think ours is probably a low risk as well.
And one more comment, it's not the whole duration of that road of FM 1976, but there is a center lane, a turn lane in the center of that FM 76 for a portion of the road.
Thank you.
Yeah, I got a couple more. Did TxDOT, have they talked about grabbing any more of your right of way, or have they Did they already grab some early on?
I believe they grabbed it when they redid the road. They have not asked us for any more right of way.
And basically, if TxDOT comes back and says, wow, before we give you this approval, you've got to put in an acceleration or a decel lane, you would probably do that
I mean,
if required.
yeah, they would.
The way that we've structured this PUD is we don't get those curb cuts without TxDOT's approval. So
That's,
Michael strong-armed us.
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it's kind of a, for some of us, it's a no-brainer, but people who don't deal with this every day don't, they're like, well, they don't understand that this is TxDOT's. This one's TxDOT's. This one is,
Right.
I mean, that's their ball of wax. That's their, we're gonna play by their rules.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Okay, I'm good, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Okay.
Good. Anyone else? Okay, so we've had the 2 public hearings, we've had the comments from you all. We've got comments back to you, so if there is no other discussion.
Move to approve.
Okay, I have a motion from Councilmember Najarian.
Second.
By Councilmember Goolsby. And so, if there's nothing else, then we'll call for the vote then, please. Chris?
Councilmember Najarian.
Aye.
Councilmember Goolsby.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Neville.
Aye.
Councilmember Buck.
Aye.
Councilmember Shelby.
Aye.
Councilmember Vaughan.
Aye.
Motion passes. Welcome to the neighborhood.
Thank you.
Looking forward to working with you. Thank you very much. Okay, all right. Next item is tab number C, presentation of the concept plan for Loop 1604 and Byrd PUD.
No, this would be your one chance to get out. I understand that you are not all from here, and you probably have somewhere to go.
Thank you all.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much.
Mayor, Council, as you know, the City Council and the Economic Development Corporation had some closed meetings to hear presentations on a proposed development on the city and the PDC property on Loop 1604, which runs from Byrd all the way down to the HEB property line. And so what we had, we signed the MOU recently, which is in effect, and so we have requested of the developer that they come and do a public presentation, perhaps not to the greatest detail that they gave to the council and the EDC, but an overview or a concept plan so that the general public is aware of what we're working on. And while they're coming in and getting ready, I just want to make sure everybody understands that when you have a project much like theirs and this one that we're talking about, they don't happen overnight, they happen over years. And so with that, I'll see who we have here. Hello. Sean, are you going to be the main speaker? All right, there you go, you're on.
Okay. Do I control?
Yes.
Yes.
How are you guys? Thanks for having us here. Control. Okay. So, just thank you for the introduction, Kim. So, we've been working on this for a long time and been down here probably looking at this particular piece of property. We started engaging July of last year, I believe, on this, and we're lucky enough to catch it at the right time when you guys had the RFP process. We had been envisioning something grand, something amazing to contribute to the community, and that's what we intend to do here. So UC Station will be at the new site of North Lake Business Park. So what you're seeing here is a master plan layout. We intend for this to be a very congruent community, so it's going to have a very nice appeal. A lot of the aspects are going to be organized by POA, so you will see a lot of the same architecture throughout. I'll get into the use type just next, but what you're seeing is 1604 down at the bottom, University Boulevard at the top, and it's going to be a couple streets in. The first coming from Kitty Hawk, directly through HEB and Walmart. There'll be a back end inside through Universal City, and then there'll be a couple fronts, one's along 1604. Here's the use type for this parcel. The red, what you're seeing there is going to be retail frontage. The yellow is going to be multifamily and senior living. The majority of the multifamily is going to be on the left side. That right side that you're seeing is where we've going to have the senior community going in. And then the orange is going to be an industrial commercial mixed use. As far as the end users at this point, We've got our vertical developers tagged, but as far as who's going to be in, occupying these storefronts and the names of all these pieces, we don't have that information there. We're still very early on in the process. A major point when we were talking with the city was having this be a very pedestrian-friendly community. We know that's really important, and we want to see that maintained here. So you're going to see bike paths and walking paths going directly through the middle. There'll be street parking as well. You're going to see, so if you see the green circle on the right area, that's actually going to drive directly between the multifamily and the senior living. That's also going to be a walkable to the community. So we don't want this to be a UC station, to be a station that stands alone and keeps the outsiders from coming in. We want this to be something that everyone in the community can enjoy. What our intention was with taking things north like that, the bike, we know that there's plans for the downtown area and there's already some connectivity from bike paths coming from that way. We'd like to see at some point that all be connected. I think that, that'd be a great asset for the city to have as well. What you're going to see here is just a couple, storyboards of what we envision this to look like. So a lot of architecture that's pretty typical down in San Antonio. We're going to have a lot of, we'd like to see a lot of stone mortar. And we're probably looking at 3 stories for the density. We'd also like to have a great amenity stack at the multifamily and at the senior living piece. So you're going to have very nice pools. You're going to have great weight rooms, great facilities for the people living there. And obviously this is going to be something that's catering to the military community quite a bit. So it's going to be an affordable price point for them. For the retail side, we're going to have the architecture try and match the best we can through the POA, as was mentioned. And I think we're going to have a lot of great vendors that are looking to build this last piece of Universal City frontage along 1604. And then finally, for the green space, this is one of the things we're very, very excited about assisting with. We have a dream for building some kind of amphitheater that's going to anchor the community, but we're going to need some help, and we're going to need to have the land that can do that. So we're still trying to figure out how we can build this in here. A lot of it's, our initial idea was to have HEB participate. Whether or not that can happen, that's unknown. We're talking about some other spots too. Kim, do you want to mention those spots and all that are painted there? Okay. So this is our initial mock-up of what we'd like to see. This to me creates a very flowing community. I'll go back to the, let's see if we can get back here to the master. I think this would be a great one. So for us, I think this is going to be what you're seeing in that green space in the middle. That's our initial idea. Hopefully we can build that. If we can get HEB to play ball, we'd love to have some of that land that can assist and be driven towards this too. And then we're going to have hurdles along the way. What topo issues are we facing? What's going to be actual? What land can we actually build on? What earth needs to be moved? Costs. There's a lot riding on that. So we'll have it's going to be a typical development. You'll see the roadway infrastructure built out first, and then the vertical components will come, probably a year after all that's underway. So we're looking at, as Kim said, this is probably 2 years till getting those start to be built up. So we'd like to see us breaking ground on this at the early part of next year for the roadways and everything. And during that time, once we are kind of laying the foundation for that, we can start calling on the people we'd like to see taking up residence here. So we put a lot of heart and soul into this. I think that it's going to be a really awesome sense of pride for the community. That's what my vision is for this. I want this to be something that each one of you guys are proud to have. And that's where we really want this to make it a co-project with the city where we are at the wheels together here, trying to drive the thing that's going to work the best for you guys too, not only us. And ultimately, look where we're at. We're on the front doors of Randolph Air Force Base. We want this to be a fixture for that community as well. So we want them to have a lot of involvement, have a sense of pride. We've got some folks with us that have the ability to, effectively communicate at the senior level leadership on base. So it'll be interesting to see how that all progresses. And I don't know if there's much else to say other than we're really excited to get working. I think we've got a really great concept. We've got a really great team. We've got a couple of our team members here tonight. So a lot of people have experience in this community, Texans, and I think you guys are gonna be really proud of us. So what's next? Do we have questions?
Questions from council?
Any comments, questions? We wanted to make sure you got a presentation so you and the audience could get an idea of what the proposed plan is going to be in the future. And I think they outlined it very well. It would be, I think, a fantastic addition to our community. And so you just get an idea now what they plan to do, what they would like to see conceptually, what they would like to do. So I'll open it up to council. If you guys have any comments, questions you want to make of the team? Yes, start with you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Great to see you gentlemen back again. And from day one when this was presented to the council and the EDC, that was, yeah, we had an EDC, we had council here. The presentation you guys gave was not only something that I could envision, and the rest of the council was envisioning for that area with the mixture of commercial and just the beautification of that area. But what was really big was the passion that you all had behind this project, which got us aboard with the passion to have this project and saying, keep that passion, and as life goes on and things come up, let's not say, well, we want this, you know, it's good to see that you're still on that. And I just am, from day one, been aboard and am aboard now, and I would just love to see this start going, and hopefully we can get this going soon.
Thank you.
Okay,
Ms. Goolsby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. While Councilmember Najarian may not have been able to envision this, some of us, you nailed it for our vision. So I was excited day one when I opened this. It was everything I'd hoped for. So I appreciate what y'all done, the efforts, every how far this piece of land can go is really impressive. I do want to make sure that we do talk a little bit about the timing of it. I know we talk about, not everything is going to happen at once. Just want to make sure everybody understands that you're not going to be building from left to right all at the same time. You're going to build pieces at a time as they fill up. We move to the next one as we develop and as that happens. And if you do build it all at once, yay! But I just want to make sure that it's understood that it's going to be a process. And I'm going to second what Paul said about y'all's passion, and then second what you said about that team that you've put together. You have a fantastic team on this, so I'm very excited. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Anyone else?
Mr. Turner, can you give us just an idea of what happens next? Like what's going to be the administrative process? Not necessarily construction, but like they're going to bring a PUD, like we heard earlier, right?
Right, lots of steps. So we did the RFP, we've done the MOU, we have a working team that is meeting with them on a regular basis, identifying all of the items that need to go into it. They're about ready to submit a PUD application, which will be the next big step from them. The next step for the city is the real estate attorney that we have is developing the transfer of the land from the city to the EDC. And then we'll have a development agreement with Reunion, and then we'll also be working on the PUD process. So, and thank you for asking, because I wanted to make sure, tagging on to what Mr. Goolsby said, this doesn't all happen at once. And just like with the very first one, this will come back before the city council, and it will have other public presentations as we go through this process so that everyone is apprised of what's happening. And we'll be doing a PUD, just like we did on the last presentation. So those are the big items that you're gonna see. But amongst there's lots of little things that need to happen.
No?
Yeah, looking way ahead. Looking at that traffic circle coming over P off to the rear of the property. When is that expected to happen?
So that's a city project, and that's a discussion that we'll be having separate from them.
Yeah, but have any idea of when?
He's talking about the engineering,
Oh, yeah, we're still a couple months out from finishing that.
finishing the engineering.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Byrd.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Guys, thanks for coming out again. I really appreciate you being here. Sorry, I'm trying to get back to my notes here. Sean, I hold a bi-weekly meet and message event where I host the residents, and a lot of them came out, and we have an opportunity to discuss the items on the agenda. One of the things that they asked us about was, how close is this going to be to reality and the finished project? Their comment was related to the forum that went in over there on 1604 and 35. And one of the residents that came to my meeting on Sunday said that he had been going to all of the hearings about plans for the forum, which is kind of what we're doing right now. And the developers for the forum presented images with lakes and fountains and flowing rivers of milk and honey. Okay, not quite like that. But that they, you know, it looked very, very nice, and everybody was super excited. And the project that they got at the end when the forum was finished was a far cry from what they had actually presented.
Was that city on land in that project?
I don't know any of the details. I don't believe it was.
And it was primarily done in the cities of Live Oak and Selma, and it was not done under a PUD, so they didn't have what he's getting to is you have more control than they do on that project.
So if we could talk just a little bit for my own edification, how much control is the city council going to have over the final design plans, that if it looks significantly different than this, are we going to have, you know, how far are we going to be into the plan before we put the brakes on or something like that and have to, you see what I'm getting at?
So go back to the last presentation that you had where they did the PUD concept plan. At some point, they will come back with that as well. Talk about materials, layout, things of that nature, where they're going to do the types of landscaping, types of fencing, and then you're going to have your public hearing, and then all that is going to be codified in the document. So during that process, if there is something in there that you're not seeing that you were expecting to see or hoping to see, or we hadn't already discussed with them, or you hadn't already discussed with them, then you bring that up and we work through that process. But we understand, and I don't want to pick on any architects, but architects can make anything look pretty. They really can. And sometimes what we see on paper doesn't always translate over into reality, because you're seeing, you know, fluffy clouds in the sky and certain kinds of bushes and landscaping, and in reality they might not even grow in this area. So we will get as close as we can, but understand that an architectural rendering is a rendering, it's not a reality.
Yes, I understand. That part I understand, but apparently the concern was, and I obviously was not there for the negotiations when the forum was proposing to build there, but the resident who was there for a lot of the stuff says, what the forum looks like now in actuality is nothing even close to what was presented for approval and for consideration. So just for everybody's edification, I wanted to clarify what differences this has to the presentation and then the actual realities of the forum. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate it.
Good point. Significant difference.
I can speak to that a little bit. I mean, there's a couple factors here that differentiate, I think, that. I mean, I don't know much about that project, but what I can say here is that the cities will be involved throughout the process, because this is a city-owned piece of property. So you're always going to have somebody with the best interest in the city in mind there to assist. Second part of this is we have some great people working on this project. So the people that are all working on this project are all local here. So no one is from New York, no one's from California. this is a sense of pride in their own community. This isn't their backyard. This doesn't look the way it should. They're going to have to live with that. They're going to see me right in their face all the time. But that being said, people are working here. They want to see this thing succeed. I mean, this is, you know, they're tied to this community. Third point being is I would not be involved with this if I did not want it to be something stellar. I want us to make sure that we're going to do right by the city. This is, you know, this is a place I served at, you know, on active duty. I think that this is we've got to do right for this community. Not only for the military, but also Universal City that's kind of been the backbone and supporting base for a long time. So I would not be involved if I thought that this was the direction we were going to go. I want to make sure we do the best thing we can. You know, obviously there'll be economic conditions to prevent some things, maybe enable others. That's time will tell. We can't predict the future on that. But what we can say is we're not people from outside this community looking to make a mark that we can just leave behind.
Thank you, Sean. Good. Thank you very much. I think, again, it's a win-win, a totally win. And I really appreciate what you guys have already put into it. And again, as the council members know, your passion is just amazing. It's amazing. And we just absolutely look forward to working with you on this project to make it a reality as soon as it possibly can. Okay? That's all right. Anyone else? I think we're really good. Again, this is a presentation. We wanted to make sure you and the audience had a chance to see conceptually what this plan is all about. And we can tell you that there's a serious dedication by the team that's going to be working on this project. And there's already been so much related activity done between and the team of Reunion already. And we're just at the beginning. So let's press on. So thank you very much, Sean. Thank you for you guys. And we look forward to working with you in the future. Absolutely, for sure. So thanks very much.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having us, sir.
All right, thank you. Okay, all right, so let's move on to our next item, which is tab number D. Discuss and to consider ordinance 656-C-2022. It's an ordinance setting the ad valorem tax rate for 2022 at 0.540000, M&O at 0.428372, INS at 0.111628 for $100 of appraised value, and appointing a tax assessor collector. This is our second reading on this issue.
Second reading, no change.
Second reading, no change. Discussion is open. And I'll be glad to entertain that motion as well.
Move for approval.
Second. Motion made by Councilmember Vaughan, second by Councilmember Goolsby. Discussion further? Mr. Neville.
The last council meeting when we did this, I talked to some of my neighbors who are retired, who are over the age of 65 and had their taxes reduced. They want to spend the money to make sure we have a good fire police department in this city. Yet I don't know how we can rectify that this late date. But I can come to this conclusion that unless we have good fire and police protection, what else to go for our citizens to live here? It means the number 6 place that they want to live in the state of Texas. I don't know how to rectify that at this late date. I just wish we'd had more thought in going ahead and recognizing that police public services is necessary to take care of our citizens. That's all.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
I want to word this properly too. These last couple weeks between our last meeting as well, when we were adopting this and throwing all the numbers around, we wanted to get to a place where we could be able to go under and save the taxpayers money, not raise taxes, and come to a good compromise. And everybody that was here, there's a lot of you that are here that were there then, a lot of people are missing. But through those last couple of weeks, I've also had neighbors and concerned citizens rest in universal esteem about the, thanks for saving the money, and we appreciate the efforts, but at the same time, hearing about what we had at the time was the so-called wish list of some of the things that Mr. Whitson had brought up tonight. The wish list is not, to us, was not just a wish list, it was the firemen, the police department. Things that, not just wish, things that are necessary to this community is growth. That this didn't cover. And through the numbers, and I'm going to apologize for myself, as I started looking on and listening to people, I was agreeing to a rate that didn't cover that. And the amount of money that it would take to cover that is very, very nominal, $1.80, $1.23, I can't exactly remember the number that was going around. That would fully fund firemen, for instance, what you had brought up. When you had made when Mr. Shelby had made the no vote, I was kind of wondering why after we had all compromised, and it did dawn on me for the little amount of money, having that 7th fireman to be able what we need so much would end up. And again, as I said before, I'm not a mathematical genius. I'm a Mr. 101. But the economics of having a fireman that we need to be able to fill out the spot that we need him for will decrease the amount of overtime, will make their services better. I think at the same time it would end up paying for itself. The need for another police officer, a need for somebody helping Kristen back here who wears so many darn hats. It's she does a fantastic job, but we all worry about when we're overtaxed. We're talking as far as our job's concerned. Police burnout, fireman burnout, Kristen burnout. I mean, seriously. And what I feel bad about is when I start talking about it further and talking about with Ms. Turner, the manager, bringing up certain things, I was like, we can still bring this down and come up with another number that doesn't raise taxes on people. And she said, well, the city basically said it's our second reading, but we can't change the number. And that's because that's in our charter. And that kind of, I thought we might have a chance to change that number tonight. I'm happy with being able to go to 0.540 and lowering those taxes. But at the same time, as somebody who lives in this city and somebody who listens to everybody, people out here and people that have approached me during this time that want these services, I'm with you, Mr. Neville. I sure wish there was something we could do to rectify the situation. I would. This city is moving up, not out. We need the protection. We need the fire. We need the police, and we need to keep our staff from burning out. You start burning too many fires, you can't contain any of them, and the work suffers from it. Yes, I wish there was something we could do. If the city staff has any way of saying, but what happens if we don't, if this doesn't get approved, if we don't approve this? Can you just give me Mr. I'm sorry.
Yes, sir. By law, you are required to complete this process by September 29th in order to get everything into all the appraisal districts and things of that nature so they can go about to do their work. If you fail to pass a tax rate by September 29th, then you are in effect stuck with the tax rate that was in place last year. So that would be the .589203, I believe.
So we would revert back to the tax rate we had.
Yes, sir.
So in worst case scenario, if we voted this down, it goes back to that. We haven't lowered it to 540. At the same time, we haven't increased taxes.
That is.
And if everything worked out fine, because again, this is fictitious money that we're saying that we could have left on. Well, let me qualify that. The budget, in other words, we're going to have this big overflow of money at the end of the year. We don't know that. We're basing our budget on that. We don't want to go into deficit. We're trying to keep things down. But if the numbers all went right and nothing changed, we would have the amount of money in the budget to be able to fully fund another police officer, another fireman, some help that's desperately needed in our office.
Right.
Correct?
But in fairness, let's
Yeah.
finish off the discussion that you and I had on the tax rate and the hearings that we had. So the budget that is provided and the tax rate that is provided allows the staff to do and provide everything for the residents and for the businesses at the .54, right? So we know that in there, it did include already one other fireman. It did include a traffic officer, which in a sense should be paying for itself. And then it did have in a part-time librarian and then a parks personnel. And so those items have been provided for. And so the staff got everything that it had in its budget. So I can tell you that, we're happy with the outcome. But I think also that the residents got what they asked for too, and that was for a lower tax rate. Now, as for the wish list, the needs of the city never go away. Let's just, we started that conversation when we started talking about the street projects. Streets are always going to need to be fixed. We're going to grow. We're going to need more police, fire, staff, parks personnel, parks, etc. So that is the natural ebb and flow of this particular public service that we're in. So I understand that some of you maybe would have liked to have added another fireman or another police officer or some assistance for some of our staff positions that are heavily endowed with tasks that have to be performed. It's not to say that that all is just going to go away, because we can come back again next year. We also know that believe it's the second meeting in October. We're going to be wrapping up this current fiscal year, and at that time we'll have an idea where we are in terms of revenue and expenses. And there may be some funding left over, and then at that time, we are capable, as we always do at the end of a budget season, saying, here's where we are, here's our excess revenue, city council, what do you want us to do with it? So I guess if we can keep it on an upbeat note, that's what I would provide for all of you.
Thank you. I'm good. Mr. Shelby first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Cool. I think my big concern at this point still lies in the fact that while we've created some kind of miracle where the tax freeze hasn't affected our revenue generation, by moving away from 0.58 down to 0.54, we are taking that freeze and we're backtracking it even more, which, cool, everybody's going to get a little bit extra money in their pocket. When the time comes that we have to raise again, everybody who's at 0.54 now will not be generating any extra help for another firefighter, another police officer, help for Kristen. Things costing more. That is going to fall on people under 65, apartment complexes, who are going to just pass that right into their renters, no matter how old you are, or what age, or what your job is. They're just going to send that right on through and raise rents. That's going to go on rental properties, people who own homes in Universal City that rent them out. Oh my Lord, my taxes went up 7% this year because last year they didn't raise it at all. In fact, they lowered it, but they didn't raise it 3.5%, so they get to raise it 7 this time. What are they gonna do? Pass that through to the renters. Our businesses in Universal City are going to feel that when we have to raise taxes again. What are those businesses gonna do? Wow, do I really wanna stay here if my tax rate goes up like this, or I wanna find someplace else? Like maybe in Live Oak, where they have tons of sales tax revenue because they have the Quorum and IKEA and everything else that generates all that sales tax, and their property taxes are lower. We don't have that. So what I'm talking about is, let's stop thinking about this year. We are here to think about the next 5, 10, 20 years down the road. $40 this year is cool. What is it going to look like for everybody that's not in that freeze 5, 10, 20 years down the road? I'm asking us to think about what the long-term effect of this decision is, not the short term. Not the short term. Hey, I got a coupon, I got to save $5 on my movie. This is a very small savings with a very long-term implication. I just want to make sure we're all thinking about that. There's several of us that have been up here for a while, and we've watched long-term effects and how that affects the city as a whole. There have been those of us who sat up here and had to raise taxes 7% when that was the max. We could raise it every single year. I'm just saying, please think about the long-term effect of this decision. We're not here to make short-term decisions. That's not what we're supposed to be here for. Thank you.
Mr. Goolsby and then Mr. Vaughan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, just in response, well, first off, I honestly thought when we were having this discussion that back and forth, I asked, how much does a police officer cost? We came up with a total, and then Councilmember Shelby asked for this, this, and this. And I'd like to throw a few more thises, but he didn't. And then we went back to how much does an additional police officer cost, and we increased that lower number to now contain one additional police officer, because I understand what Councilmember Shelby was chasing, but I was hoping that, you know, if I can't afford it this year, much like the development, I'm going to do this year, I'm going to do that next year, I'm going to do that next year. So if I can add a police officer this year, I can add a firefighter next year. Eventually we'll get to admin and public works and those pieces. I thought we had an additional detective type officer or something like that that was under that 5.4 number.
So yes, you did mention the police officer, and then he asked about the firefighter, and then there was discussion about all of it. And then we went through the visioning of the tax rates that were thrown out and calculated. The tax rate that you ended up with, the 0.540, the one you voted on, left a cushion in the budget of $178,000. But that's not going to cover a city clerk, a fireman, and a police officer. Okay, so we ended up with really almost none of them. Out of fairness, really, to all of you, nobody got what you were hoping to get in it.
So
doesn't mean you can't come back later and we find out the revenue is over and we come back and say, hey, we're tracking really well, we're this far in. What do you want to add?
I mean, if we're looking at 170 over what y'all had asked for. Again, I still feel like that was a great compromise, because that allowed us to maybe hire a public works, or maybe hire an admin, or hire a police officer. He doesn't get in the car, but you know, that's that type of thing. I felt like we were making those steps forward. And when Mr. Whitson came up and said, you know, argued for the additional, I was offended because I was like, but we did. I really thought we had put in money for something, someone, and at 170,000, I feel like that's pretty close, and that we can look at some of those other funds, like you said, the extra cushion somewhere else, and really push for that police officer or that fireman. I really, that's where I am on this. Have housing valuations ever decreased from the county?
No, that was one of the discussions that came up when they had the hurricanes in Houston and Corpus Christi, and people were saying, oh, I need to have an adjustment in my valuation because, my home is damaged or dilapidated, and there's nothing in the law that provides that. So generally speaking, no, they have not, unless you had a fire or some catastrophic thing that has happened that fits within the tax code. Historically, and I think the chief appraiser had mentioned that they go between 3 and 4% every year is what the valuation is. This was the unusual blip, as Mr. Shelby called it, but I don't think you're going to see housing values go down.
Okay, so while I want to make sure that we're understanding that, like, my rate increased because, my rate stayed the same or lowered, but my valuation increased. So again, I'm still trying to hit that target, and this is where we're doing this. My valuation, my taxable valuation, they took it to the max, but my market valuation, they said was stupid. So they have a lot of fluff still to play, so I have years of fighting that. I do on mine. I didn't go down and fight that market valuation versus what they're going to tax me on. There was no reason to, because nothing in the neighborhood allowed me to. So again, I understand what you're saying about looking years down the line, and I was mad every year, and you were mad. We were all mad. Every year we had to increase because we were in such a hole. And then when we went here, it's like, oh my gosh, but my house valuation is still higher than I feel like it. So I think we're still hitting that target. And if we can have that discussion every year about how much can we increase to this or to that. And I'm going to tell you, there in years past, previous management, I didn't ask the city manager. We asked the fire chief. We asked the police chief. Do you have what you need? And if we get that yes, then we approve where we're at. So it's kind of.
Which is why we have the department heads present the budget. I know there's probably, people don't understand how a budget gets done. I don't make the budget. The finance director doesn't make the budget. The department heads make their own budget. We put it all together. We sit and we go over it with them about 8 or 9 different times and say, hey, you can't add $500,000 into your budget just because you think you need this. You need to play nice with everybody else. So what goes in and what gets cut is somewhat a decision of the department heads. And most of them don't even make their own budget. They send worksheets down to the lower end and say, what are you going to need to get your job done? And then all that information floats back up. So it's a very involved process. But again, I know there's the $170,000, $178,000 left. And I know that budgets are kind of one of those things. They're like this. It's a mark that we try to hit. I can't say that we're going to get a bullseye because that's almost impossible because there's too much fluctuation in the market and the cost of goods and everything else and the rate at which people pay their taxes. I still feel like we have a very good budget this year, and I still think, the tax rate is sufficient to cover what we need. Could we always add more? Again, yes, we can. Will we come back maybe later in the year and say, as we will probably on the 18th, if there's additional, here's the wish list, what should we fund? And before we come with that wish list, as a staff, we always have that discussion because everybody can't have what they want. And sometimes even amongst the department heads, they have to give and take so that a need that is greater in one department gets to go before I wish I could have in another department happen. So all of that will happen in the future.
We just ask for you, we have to know the needs. If I have to have another police officer, by gosh, we'll have another police officer. If we have to have another fireman, I mean, and some of us, you have to beat over the head with that to make sure that I understand that you have to have another fireman. You have to have, if he says it, I'm not gonna listen, but if you tell me, I will listen. So please understand that, because I'm always gonna say we need another police officer. So I am going to be looking for guidance from staff and department heads on if you have to have another fireman, if you have to have another public works guy, if you have to have that. So I'm happy with where we're at. I know it's frustrating on all accounts. As a business owner, I don't want to pay any more taxes on my property than I absolutely have to, but by gosh, there's some things coming up on the next vote that I hope that people get out and vote for. So that's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Turner.
Mr. Hunt?
I'd just like to say that it's important that we raise taxes. People will be paying more. So if you weren't frozen, on average, your home went up more than 10%. We didn't drop the rate 10%, so you're going to be paying more. It's a very small amount. On the average home that our financial advisor said it's about $1 a month. So you will be paying more. Yes, the rate went down, but it's a tax increase. The whole budget process was a presentation from the city of what they wanted. We sat through several long meetings. Everything that was in that budget was approved. She's doubling down on it tonight, our city manager, saying that she got what she wanted. She's happy with the budget. This tax rate gives us a tax that will fund that budget. There's no reason to raise the tax to generate more money just to try to have more money. At the last meeting when we were talking about what to adopt, the city manager was asked, is there anything else that didn't make it in the budget? And she mentioned a few things that she said tonight again. There's always things that don't make it in the budget. You mentioned some of the new people we've hired. There's also the 2 mental health officers, 1 police, 1 fire. I don't know if those were in your what you mentioned.
They're in the budget for 5 years.
Right, so those positions have also been added. So I think it's important that we take our taxpayers seriously. We're asking them to approve a large bond, and if we just say we should get more money now to try to do everything we want to possibly do, I think that's inappropriate. The city got what they wanted in the budget. This gives them that, and I think we should stick to it. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Mr. Shelby, then we'll get Mr. Byrd.
I'll go after him since I already gone once.
Thank you, Mr. Shelby. Mr. Mayor, I appreciate it. The way I've understood it, Ms. Turner, is that the city is generating an additional about $600,000 in property tax revenue from 2021 to 2022. Is that approximately accurate?
There was a number, I believe it was 628,000 in new revenue. Some of that is from properties that were just added to the tax roll. That was about 250,000. So generally about $400,000 was added to the tax roll because of the 10% increase on non-frozen residential and commercial properties.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Turner. I'd like to point out that the 10% increase in value in taxable values is only for those properties that are subject to the homestead exemption.
Correct.
Those properties in Universal City that do not have the luxury of the homestead exemption went up by the full valuation. According to the 2020 census for Universal City, 43% of the properties in Universal City are rentals, whether it's apartments or houses that are rented, not owned, and therefore not subject to the homestead exemption. As an example, the apartment complex right across the street, their value from 2021 to 2022 increased from 16.7 to $21.5 million. That apartment complex across the street is going to end up paying an additional $17,000 in property taxes for Universal City alone. I ran some numbers to compare a house that was valued at $300,000 and subject to the homestead exemption, and compared the same home if it were not subject to the homestead exemption. that house that was subject to the homestead exemption, their property tax year over year increased by approximately $15. That's about $1 a month. That same property that is not subject to the homestead exemption would have increased in property taxes. They would have paid an additional, $420 year over year, and that represents an additional $35 per month. Not just $1 a month, but $35 a month. So when I consider the apartment dwellers across the street from us, and I consider the residents of Universal City whose properties are not covered by the homestead exemption, those are the people that I have in the back of my mind, those people who don't have the same luxuries as I, or most, if not all, the people in the room here who have that homestead exemption. They're going to be hit the hardest. So the notion that taxes have gone down in Universal City, I just don't think holds a lot of water. For a lot of us, they're close to staying the same. For a portion of our residents, they may have gone down a small amount, but for the vast majority of residents in Universal City, their property taxes have gone up. Now, to the notion of us not caring about our police, fire, city administration, something like that, the revelation that there was a wish list only came up at the last city council meeting. Now, I admit I am the freshman here, or one of the freshmen up here. I was not aware of the existence of a wish list. Had I known that the city desired to add, even conceptually, to add an additional policeman or a police officer, or a firefighter, that is definitely something that should have been considered. I do not believe that our first responders should be on a nice to have list. So what I would hope for, Ms. Turner, is that next budget season, let's bring that wish list out in the open. And let's start talking about it at the end of July and the beginning of August, so that my fellow council members and I have a clear idea, what would the city like to have? And let's start running the numbers a little bit earlier so that we can say, what would it cost per $100 of valuation in order to fund 1, 2, 3, whatever will prioritize that wish list, so that we can look seriously at what could be added to the city's budget, having a minimal, medium, or large impact to the city's budget. So I wanted to clarify that again, the accusation that city council is not taking the concerns of the residents into account, I think I disagree with that. We have to look at all the residents of Universal City, not just individuals, and consider those people who are going to be impacted the most, who potentially are the least able to afford it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Shelby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I do want to be clear, elephant in the room, changing the tax rate. I want to make sure we're very clear. We are not affecting the dollar. We do not set the dollar amount that our property owners pay. That we set the rate. If you are lucky enough for a house, that you own a house that went up $500,000 in value, welcome to the state of Texas, where you get taxed on that. That is the state of Texas thing. And that's for the county, that's for the school district, that's for City of Universal City, it's for the Alamo Community College District, the University Health System. I think there's one more. Bear County, I think, yeah. So, one, we are talking about one portion of what you pay property taxes on. And we are setting a rate, which, when we first came in, our no new revenue rate was originally like 0.64. It was ridiculous, right? I saw it and went, well, that sucks. That really sucks. Like, I just felt my property values and managed to get them down low enough that I'm not going to end up paying a whole lot more. And then the tax rate came in and, well, I guess I'm going to, well, that sucks. Life moves on. I will adjust my budget and deal with it. Then we found out we don't quite have to be at 0.64. Cool, well, let's do 5.8. my property values, I managed to fight them down, awesome. If your property value went up and you didn't fight it, that sucks. But we're setting the rate, okay? The people in this town that benefit from us changing the rate the most are the ones that have $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, $900,000, $1 million properties. Not the people who have $75,000, $50,000 properties that are going to make a difference of a couple of bucks. Dollar for dollar, we're benefiting those who own expensive properties. And if you own an expensive property, you probably have the budget to handle an increase. I just want to make sure we're very clear. We are not talking apples to apples here. Because, yeah, the water rate affects everybody equally. When SAWS comes in and says, or not SAWS, Edwards Aquifer comes in and says, this is your rate. And we have to raise our rate in order to pay for their rate. That's not us trying to make more money off of our water customers. That's us making the money we need to do to pay Edwards for the water that they're providing. When the CCMA and Sarah come in and raise our wastewater rates and our stormwater rates, we have to raise rates to pay for that. And yes, that affects everybody, dollar for dollar, equally. Percentage-wise, it's not equal, right? It doesn't affect people who are making $70,000, $80,000, $100,000, $200,000 a year, whatever they're making. It doesn't affect them as much. I just want to make sure that we understand. We want to help people that own property. This is about people that own property. This is all about people that own property. It has an effect on renters, absolutely. And that is up to the people that own those properties and what they want to do with their added cost and how they want to pass that through to their renters. And $17,000 a year of increase, they spread it across their however many hundred of renters they have. And they raise their rates. I agree. And landlords that own rental property in the city will do the exact same thing because they don't want to pay more. So they're going to make their renters pay more. So, yeah, it sucks all around. But I still come back to the point that at some point we will not build new things and we will have no new revenue to add. And therefore, when things get more expensive, we will not be able to lean on new developments to bring in new revenue to reduce a total ad valorem increase, right? That will have to go back to the taxpayers for the full gambit. Oh, no, I'm sorry, not all the taxpayers. I'm sorry, I left you. 64 and younger, and business owners and people who don't have homestead exemptions. We'll take all of that in. So, when we were talking about compromise, my compromise was leaving it the same as the previous year. If your property values went up, cool. If it went up too much that your taxes went up, maybe you should consider selling your property. If you can't afford it. That's a reality. You know, somebody told me, I don't have enough money to buy that TV. Well, I'm not buying that TV. So, that's where I'm at. Thank you.
We've had lots of these discussions before, and I reiterate again that the city, and Ms. Kearney even brought it up this evening, that the city is going to get what it needs, and the citizens are going to get what they need. So that's what was approved by you all a couple of weeks ago. And so what you're faced with tonight, we have a motion and a second. This is the second reading, and we have to vote on that, and just like we did for that first reading. Mr. Neville?
I just want to say, 41 years ago when I bought my house, $58,000. 41 years ago when I bought my house, $58,000. The last bill I got has it now at $193,000. Even though my taxes are frozen, that's what I paid my taxes on. So, I just want you to know that.
Okay.
That being said, I'm ready to vote.
All right, any other discussion, anybody? All right, we do have to vote in a second, a motion and a second, so let's go ahead and get the vote, please, Kristen.
Councilmember Vaughan,
Aye.
Councilmember Goolsby,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Neville,
Aye.
Councilmember Buck,
Aye.
Councilmember Najarian,
Aye.
Councilmember Shelby.
No.
Okay, that motion passes, so that will move on right now, so that will be the effective tax rate for M&O and IRS. Let's move on to tab E. Discuss and consider resolution 889-D-2022. It's a resolution adopting a collection development policy for the municipal library of the city of Universal City, establishing legislative findings and providing an adoption and setting an effective date.
Thank you, Mayor. As you know, this policy, the last time we looked at it was in 2017. It basically guides the staff on how they go about doing and creating the collection at the library. And so obviously things have changed. There's some relevancy within the world that calls for some of the items to be changed. And so what Christina has done with the library staff and the library advisory committee, if they have put a policy together, they've reviewed it, it's been through legal counsel, and they are presenting it for council consideration this evening. That's mine. Christina, do you have anything that you'd like to add to that?
Just seconding what Ms. Turner said, we just wanted to update it due to the current nature of what's happening with book banning right now in the world, and then also we needed some updates to the collection development, so as we move forward and progress into the future, just mirroring that. So.
Any specific questions there? I'll go ahead and entertain a motion for some discussion.
Move to approve.
Okay, motion by Councilmember Shelby. Second by Councilmember Najarian. Mr. Neville.
On page 5, on the tax form, next to last line, the word TWO is used rather than TOO. This patron deeding form more than 2 old to locate the forms on the IRS, but I don't know if that means 2 years old or 20200. A librarian should know that. And what would you get to that one? Page 7. I don't know if it really, you should use the word dies down. Kept in the collection when the demand dies down. I think subsides would be a better use of the word, especially again for a librarian. I think that's all. Thank you.
Yeah, that's an observation.
On the tax forms, is that what you're asking about, other than the word TWO?
Yeah.
Yeah, they keep the forms for 2 years.
Well, then they shouldn't say 2 years old, correct? Instead of 2 old.
I don't see where you're saying. I tell you what, mark yours up and just give me a copy of it.
Page 5.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, Kristen, call for the vote, please, ma'am.
Councilmember Shelby,
Aye.
Councilmember Najarian,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Neville,
With objections, aye.
Councilmember Buck,
Aye.
Councilmember Goolsby,
Aye.
Councilmember Vaughan.
Aye.
Okay, let's move on now. That motion passes. Let's move on to tab number F now. Discuss and to consider resolution 895-F-2022 longevity. Resolution ratifying the personnel policy for the city of Universal City passed by the City Council and amending section 5-10 longevity pay, establishing legislative findings, providing amendments, and setting an effective date. Ms. Turner?
Thank you, sir. This resolution and the next two are the ones that we discussed during the budget process, and the funding for all of these was in the budget that you approved under the tax rate of 0.540000.
Okay. We'll entertain a motion and open discussion.
Move for approval.
Second. Okay, motion motion made by Representative Neville, second by Councilmember Najarian. Discussion on this item? All right, having heard none, let's call for the vote, please, Chris.
Mayor Pro Tem Neville,
Aye.
Councilmember Najarian,
Aye.
Councilmember Byrd,
Aye.
Councilmember Goolsby,
Aye.
Councilmember Shelby,
Aye.
Councilmember Vaughan.
Aye.
Okay, that motion passes. Move on to tab G, discuss and consider resolution 895-G 2022 tuition. Resolution ratifying the personnel policy for the City of Universal City and adding section 7.07 employee tuition reimbursement, establishing legislative findings, providing amendments, and setting an effective date. Ms. Turner?
Sir, also included $25,000 in the budget, and reminding you that this is not for regular certifications that they're required. This is so that we can take some of our staff and get them educated and working on items within the city that we sometimes might need to have to go out to outside expertise.
Moving over to discussion as well. Okay, any further discussion?
I just have a comment. I know it's usually a grade of A, B, C, D. Some colleges don't go into an A plus, a B plus, a C plus, and yet you're keeping the same change.
Yes, sir.
To me, and when you talk about a pass, no pass, you know, if a person's writing a dissertation or a thesis, that's a month, that's over a semester worth of work, and you get a pass, no pass, instead of getting a grade. So I think that pass, no pass is misleading in there, but that's up to you.
So you'll have to pardon us, we weren't thinking of people who are working on their dissertations. We were actually thinking more of people who had no college education whatsoever, but wanted to start on a college path, but perhaps needed some financial assistance to get there. And so I think I used the example last time of the Certified Public Management course, which we've had a lot of people go through, and it's been very valuable to us as a community. And that course, unless you are working on your master's, is a pass or no pass. And so there's always going to be variances. If we get to a sticky point, we'll bring them back with some revisions. But as an A student, I know a difference between an A and an A plus and a B and a B plus. And of course you do, you're a professor. And thank you for my aid. At the same time, an A is an A and a B is a B, and a B plus is still just a B. It's more of a personal pride, I think, when you go from an A to a B than it is when you go from B to a B plus. It's still a B.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was excited to see that the education requirements have to be close to whatever their current job is with the city or tied to a potential promotion within the city. So when somebody wants to take Mr. Casada's job, you've got how closely does it have to be tied? Like, are we going to be very conservative in our interpretation of what is close to their current job, or are we going to be a little more liberal in terms of our interpretations of that? And
So
that's
it may not be
within
their
small
current job, it may be a job within the city that they're trying to maintain. I think when we had our example, we used Athena, who works for Randy. I would call him his executive assistant. She has a degree in finance, and she worked in the utility department, and she went down there and she started with utilities for Randy. Now she's doing his budget, his purchase orders, and a whole bunch of other stuff for her. She has a desire to move beyond that position and to be in a mid-level or a senior position. So she is going to be taking courses in human resources and governmental law and things of that nature. Is very closely tied to the job that she has now, but it's even better for her if we want to keep her in the government system, hopefully in Universal City, but you know, our job is to make people better everywhere.
Right.
And then that's what education is for. But if you want to think of it as closely related, you kind of have to think about the police and the fire department, because they have what you call regular steps that they go up. And so some of our less mature and mid-level police officers came to us by just going through the police or the fire academy. They did not go to a 2-year or a 4-year university. In some of those cases, for their positions, in order for them to advance, they have to have a college education. And if we want to keep them and keep their knowledge and their passion and love for the city, then that's where this program really comes into play.
And obviously their familiarity with the city, we want to keep
Yes.
our police officers long-term. So if we can incentivize them to better themselves, it betters the city because they're providing better services to the city and they're more likely, we hope at least, to stay with us. That's
and
our
in
goal.
the policy, if they get through that program, they have,
18 months.
they're making a commitment to the city, and if they don't, then they have to pay it back.
Awesome. Thanks, Mr. Turner. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Vaughan.
I was just gonna say, the policy is well written. I think he thought out most of what I would want to see in the policy. You're paying for the grades, and there's a recapture provision if they leave too soon. But then you also have to approve the green plan. I like all those things. The only thing that I'm a little hesitant about is we've given limited funding to it, so there's only about $25,000 in the budget. I would hope that there would be some kind of prioritization for people at the lower end of the pay scale before someone on the. So if you get multiple requests, that somehow those get first priority. I don't know if that's possible.
Yeah, when we did the survey of the staff on who would like to further their education, you know, it's more towards the mid-level people who want to move up. Some of the people just have no interest. They're happy with what they do. They're happy with just moving up within their little department, but maybe not becoming a supervisor or a manager or a detective or a fire chief or whatever it happens to be. So, yeah, there may be a point, if we have too many requests, we may have to come back with a decision on how we're going to decide who. But as a first year, I think 25,000 is a sufficient amount to kind of toss the hook out there and see who's going to be interested in really following through on their educational pursuits.
Okay. Anyone else? All right. No more discussion. Let's call for the vote then, please, Chris.
I don't have a motion.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Move to
I thought
approve.
we had a motion first.
Second.
I thought we had the motion. We did not have a motion.
No.
Okay. All right. I'll take a motion then.
Move to approve, second.
Mr. Shelby, and second by Mr. Goolsby. Okay, now call for the vote, please, Chris.
Councilmember Shelby?
Aye.
Councilmember Goolsby?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Neville?
Aye.
Councilmember Buck?
Aye.
Councilmember Najarian?
Aye.
Councilmember Vaughan?
Aye.
Okay, then motion passes unanimously. Next time, we'll go to I'll ask for the motion first, and then we'll go to discussion, which is I thought what I did last time. Okay. Anyway, tab H, discuss and consider resolution 5-H-2022 STEP, resolution ratifying the personnel policy for the city of Universal City and amending section 5-11, step increases, establishing legislative findings, providing amendments, and setting an effective date.
Okay, a little background on how this came into play. So we had done some querying of the staff on items that, you know, would increase job satisfaction, make them stay with the city a little longer, things of that nature. Some of it was done formally, some of it was done informally. Athena, again, in Randy's department, had gone as part of her CPM and learned how to be a facilitator. So she took some of the staff members that we had and in her position facilitated some discussions, and then some were done down at the golf course as well. And one of the items that kept coming up over and over again from various departments is, why is our step increase for 15 years, but it takes 20 years to retire? So what happens, you know, for those that stay, like some of our police and firemen in our public works, 30 and 35 years, and then, you know, those last years, they feel less appreciated. And so that is one of the reasons why we came back with the notion of taking the step from 15 years to 20 years. Councilmember Vaughan and I had the discussion is how many people does that really affect? Well, it really only affects 3 departments, again, police, fire, and public works, because we have a lot of people that started almost 30 years ago that have been fire captains for going on 20 years, maybe 22 years, and they haven't had a step increase for a very long time. They have the depth and the breadth of the knowledge that we need, and we're trying to do what we can to keep them. Same thing in the police department. Some of our people in there have been in their positions 20-some years, and they also have not had a step increase for a long time. And then Randy has some of his key supervisors and leads that are in that position. So it really affects maybe a dozen people, at most about 18 people. But what it does affect further down the road is people that are vested in Universal City and their retirement system and everything else. And maybe we can squeeze a few more years out of them if they know that they have that step increase coming. So that's why we got to a step increase from going from 15 years to 20 years.
Okay, I will be glad to entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
For discussion. Motion there, Councilmember Shelby. Second, Councilmember Najarian. Open discussion. Anyone? Mr. Vaughn.
I guess in your mind, what's the difference between the step and a COLA? So what would you say the distinction would be?
So a step increase is something that, provided that your performance, which is based on your department head, you're performing your job the way you're supposed to, you get that on your anniversary date every year. Some people consider it a guarantee. There are people who have not gotten step increases. Let's just say that.
I want to make that clear.
There are people who do not get a step increase. I have not given them, you have not given them, police and fire have not given them to certain people because their work was not up to standard. But for the most part, it is a slight guarantee for the employee that when the insurance goes up and the cost of goods go up, they at least have that to cover their expenses. Cost of living adjustment is solely in the hands of the council. Some years it happens, for many years it didn't happen. Thankfully, with the council that we've had in the past and the one we have now, it has happened. But it's no guarantee it's going to happen in the future. But they at least have a step increase.
Okay, can you clarify that? I get that reading the policy. So there's on the anniversary date, there's a decision made. Do they get their step, not get their step? Is it a all or nothing? Could it be a partial, or how does that?
It's an all or nothing. So everybody has a job description and other duties as assigned. And so when it gets near their anniversary date, the HR department provides the department heads with a slip of paper, says their thing. You have a choice whether to do the step or not do the step. And then if you're not going to do it, they have to write in why, and they have to have a meeting with that employee to indicate what they need to do in order for the step increase to take place the next year. And it moves on from there.
Okay, so it's an all or nothing. You either get all your step or you get no step. And then I didn't see a percentage in the policy. Is the 2.5% just kind of how it's been in the past?
It was, when the council approved it in 2004, it was at 2.5%.
Okay, so that's just kind of what you guys have been operating
Yeah, it's
since then?
generally what a lot of cities follow. When they have the step increases, they do the 2.5%.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
Ms. Goolsby, then Mr. Beck.
Thank you, sir. So how hard would it be to add a stutter step? I mean, I've had guys in my office that, you need a raise, but you don't need the full raise. Is that a bad thing? Is it goofy?
Well, so first of all, we have to go by the policy.
Can I say some of those steps are only in our current system is only at 50 cents. It ain't much of a step, depends on where you are. So it's not a huge step when it comes to steps, dollar-wise.
I mean, because if you're gonna, if we're talking about the COLA, that's up here, and that's a blanket, right?
Mm-hmm.
At my office, it's not a blanket. It's yeah, you did a great job this year, do better next year. You did okay this year, do a whole lot better next year. And it's easier to shoot and point having flexibility. Would you like to have that flexibility? Would that help in what y'all are doing?
No, because what it does is it smacks of favoritism. So this is how the city used to run. There were a lot of people for a lot of years. If you were in good stead with the city manager or your department head, you got a raise and other people didn't.
Okay.
And it created a lot of animosity and negativity. We had a hard time getting employees because other people hear about that. We couldn't get people from other cities. And so the cost of living and the step increase took all favoritism off the board. Other than the fact that if you weren't doing your job performance and there had to have been some indication within your personnel file already that you had been counseled on certain things and you hadn't corrected and you hadn't done it, or you had a lot of absenteeism or whatever it happens to be, there's a justification for not having it. But if you were generally doing your job as you're required to do, it's 2.5%. No favoritism.
Okay. And again, I'm a business, but y'all, business manager. The city is still a business.
It's a business, yes.
So what's the typical COLA?
2.5%. Oh, a typical COLA? There is no typical COLA.
We have seen 6 and we have seen 0.
I don't think we've seen 6, we've seen 5.
Okay, 5, okay, sorry, 5.
5, maybe one year we did 5.5% cost of living adjustment, but what we did is we did 3% at the beginning of the year and 2.5% later in the year if the budget allowed.
Yeah.
We've done that, we've split the COLA.
Because where I'm headed is, a good raise is, 6 in my world is like 6% and higher. So, I have no problems with this.
When we come forward with the COLA, we don't pull a number out of the sky. So there are a couple of ways that you can figure out. One is we do a survey of all the other communities through the Texas City Managers Association or whatever organizations, HR that we belong to. And we find out generally what everybody else is going to be proposing because we want to, keep up with the pace without going over. And we don't want to have to do like some of our other cities and all of a sudden do a very large cost of living adjustment because they are so far behind they can't get employees. So we try to stay mid-level. The other thing is there is an organization that does a survey of cities and other non-government agencies every year. And they do a salary survey to find out what their rates are for various positions. And then we are able to look at that information and from there understand what the regular market is doing and then compare that with what the government market is doing, and we make a decision based on those 2 items.
Okay, and you brought up salaries. Are we basically, I don't want to be the leader of the pack. I don't want to be at the back of the pack.
Correct.
We're neither one of those, is that correct?
So we are in both, but not in both. So depending on the position, some positions are different, right? Because I'll use the police. We have a bigger city. We have different needs. And so our salaries here for the police may be higher than they are in some of the other cities. But I wouldn't necessarily say that we are the highest paid because you can look at New Braunfels and San Antonio and know that they pay more than we do. So comparable for cities of our size, we are in the middle or slightly above the middle of the pack.
That's where I want to be. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Wood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. How are we going to implement this for those employees that are impacted? Let's say we have an employee that's been here for 22 years. Theoretically, they would have received 5 years worth of step increases that they didn't receive. Is this going to be retroactive, or are they just going to continue on from their current position?
They're going to continue on from their current position.
Okay, so if they've got 22 years, it'll be a year from now and when they get their first step increase, or will it come right now?
Not a year from now. It's on their
anniversary.
anniversary.
On their
date.
anniversary, okay.
So what we had discussed is if this is approved and it goes into effect on October 1st, if their hire date is October 2nd, then they get the step starting on October 2nd. If somebody else is not till,
September
February
29th.
14th, or September 29th, they're going to get theirs a year later.
Okay, but it's going to resume, it's going to start moving again, it's not going to fill in. Okay.
Their next anniversary date.
Good, thank you, I was concerned that we hadn't budgeted for this.
We did.
Well, that we hadn't budgeted for it to be retroactive back to their 15-year anniversary.
It's not retroactive, it's from October 1 moving forward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Anybody else? Phil?
I'd just like to ask one clarification. So if someone gets a promotion to a new position, they start over on the step increases,
That
right?
is correct.
So the people that we're talking about that are in the bubble are ones that have been in the same position without any promotion or advancement for over 15 years, right?
Yes, sir.
In your opinion, is that because they've not lacked initiative to get to a new position, or do you think that they're capped because there's people above them that are not allowing them to move up, or is there anything? I guess backing up, I would think that if someone is not bettered themselves over 20 years and they're in the same position, that at some point they might be capped out in compensation. Do you see that as possibility?
And I wouldn't necessarily say that they're not bettering themselves. It may be, I'll turn to the fire department now, right? We have a chief. Our last chief was in his position 41 years. The assistant chief / fire marshal was in his position for 42 years. That left a whole bunch of captains and lieutenants with nowhere to go because there was no movement in the upper echelon for them to get there. And that's why they're capped at where they're at. They're very good at their jobs. They love and hopefully love, and we know they know their jobs. It's just that you get to a certain point, I guess that glass ceiling that everybody talks about, they've hit the glass ceiling. There's nowhere for them to go unless your fire marshal and your fire chief leave their positions, and then they have the ability to apply for that. And I will say that some of them that are capped, when those positions were open, did apply for them. They just weren't the selected candidates. And it's like that in police and fire and in public works.
Great, thank you, Mayor.
Very good. Okay, any other discussion? We do have a motion and a second, correct?
Yes.
All right, let's call for the vote then, please, Chris.
Councilmember Shelby.
Aye.
Councilmember Najarian.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Neville.
Aye.
Councilmember Byrd.
Aye.
Councilmember Goolsby.
Aye.
Councilmember Vaughan.
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes. That concludes our business for this evening, so I'll turn it over to the city manager for your comments.
Thank you. Actually, I'm going to ask Randy to do a small presentation, or discussion. As you know, we've been talking about the upcoming special election in November, and there was a lot of discussion on which streets and how do we decide which streets. And so what I did is I asked Randy to go back out and pull out a list of all the streets that were titled as poor and very poor. So we have 4 categories: very poor, poor, fair, and good. And we know streets don't improve on their own, so we're still working in the very poor and the poor category. And so we put all that information out in an informational brochure, which was looked by 2 separate independent legal firms to make sure that we had accuracy in what we were presenting. And so we put the list of the streets out on the website. And then we also have, it'll be in the gateway, and we're going to have some brochures out front, etc. But there's already discussion amongst people, well, how do I know if my street is poor or very poor so that I know it's going to get selected? It doesn't work that way. There are so many variables that come into factoring in when the street is going to get done that I thought I would have Randy come back and explain the whole process. One, the poor and very poor streets, which he's already identified, and we're in the process of mapping so that people can look at it on our map, because not everybody knows where all the streets are. And so what I asked him to do is, if the bond is approved by the voters, what is the process that he has to go through, and what is council going to do to the point where we determine which streets are going to be reconstructed or rehabbed? So I'll leave it to you.
Okay, Mayor, Council.
Christian, do you have the streets?
I do, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, I want to show what I have here is the streets that you're going to
It's
see.
the same thing on the overhead.
Yeah. So these are the streets that we identified, that we put together from our pavement management book that we have, that were poor, very poor, and some of these were even fair. So there's 2 categories. There was the right control index and there was the pavement control index. So that's where they were ranked poor, very poor, or fair. Any category that a certain street that you'll see there, Ivy Lane, Kimberly, Kitty Hawks, and those in the middle there. If it had a poor, it made it say poor and then very poor. Depends on if it's right control or payment control. It could have said fair and then very poor. So anything that categorized it poor, very poor, and had a fair, it still got added to this list. So the way we look at it, these are the streets that were identified as eligible streets for the street bond project that will be considered at such time if the bond gets approved. After the approval process and we secure the funding, we will engage an engineer that will come in here and will identify and put the survey of these streets. We have to survey them all. And we'll start working on engineering numbers that will identify by looking at all the PCIs, looking at all the scores, because each road of these is going to be different. Some are going to be reconstruction projects, some are going to be mill and overlay. But when you get into reconstruction, the costs become different. And what I say, if you've seen Balboa, if you've seen Madrid, those were streets that were reconstructed that affected curves and sidewalks, drive approaches. Not all streets that are reconstructed are that you have to go to that full extent. You can just do it in between the curves or just do some curb replacement. But there's variables in cost. So when we look at this, when we come in there and we start doing this, it all depends on the packages that you decide that you want to go out and sell. Do you want to sell a $6 million package, a $5 million package? And that's what I have to base my budget on. So it depends on these streets. You see all these streets, they're all going to come in different number of prices. You're going to have a street that may be $2 million, may have another street that's only $500,000, may have a street that's only, $700,000. I have to package those, and we have to look at which one of those we can get our best bang for a dollar with. Obviously, we want to go to the most expensive ones because it's bond money. I don't have an operational budget to do a $2 million street. So obviously that would be a high priority for us to put in there. But we will package these things for y'all to see and bring it to you based on what we put together as we feel are the necessities or the priorities of this city that we need to go after to reconstruct. And then what we like to do is throw the mill and overlays with it to get the more for our money when it comes to these streets. But there's variables. We have the book. We have everything that tells us score-wise. But the other thing we have to go out there and do is actually put eyes on the ground and see some of the defects of the roads, how much of it's reconstruct. Some streets I may only reconstruct a portion of it, Balboa, over there, not Balboa, Cortez, and Amstead. Amstead only got a portion of it reconstructed. The rest of it is a mill and overlay. So there's a lot of variables when it comes to cost, and we can't tell you until we go out there physically, survey every street to know what each one of these costs are going to do. Once we know the cost, it's just like anybody's budget. You got to see what you can afford, and we'll package these things on what streets that really need to do it, because some of those are worse than others on that list, and that's what we'll look at. But again, it goes to the cost. Mill and overlay, we'll identify all the ones that are going to be mill and overlay, and we'll identify all the ones that are full reconstruction. And that's yet to be determined once we start getting the survey work done out there. And that's, again, we'll have all that for you if this bond gets approved, and then I'll have something to work with you on. Looking forward.
Good, thanks.
So the reason I asked him to do that is some people are saying, well, I need to know if my street is in the very poor or the poor category, because they're making the assumption that if they're in the very poor category, that their street is going to get done first. That is not necessarily the case. If there are 30 streets in the very poor, we're not going to do all 30 streets in the very poor because it may actually end up being a $70 million project, right? We're going to pick what we can in the very poor and then start backfilling with whatever numbers we have left over, and we're going to do mill and overlay. And those may only be in the poor category, so people can't say, oh, I'm very poor, my street's going to get done, or my street should be done first. It doesn't work that way. There are so many variables that go into deciding which street is going to get done that we can't guarantee anybody anything.
Yeah, the very poor is over with. That's the list. That's your list. Very poor, and fair. There's some fair in there. That is it. So from now on, from this list, we'll take it and we'll go out there and we'll survey everything on the ground. We'll identify the limits of the streets. There's a lot to go with it, and it all comes down to cost. For those of you who've been on council when we had the last bonds, you saw how we packaged everything together. And then there were still some streets that we didn't get to do. National and East Langley are ones that were left off the last bond that we currently are fixing to do. And so those were the next ones up. So we're actually taking care of those. So, but when it comes to identifying poor or very poor, they're there, right there.
Good, thank you. Our job is to try to make sure that we keep our citizens educated, so we can't discuss it any further this evening, but that's part of what we need to do, because it's a critical need. And 30 million is what we wanted to go for, and it's not even going to touch the surface of what we need. So let's leave it at that. So turn it over to Mr. Neville for his comments.
Thank you, Mayor. Although I did say in my invocation, the time to speak and the time to keep silent. But I want to thank everybody for coming tonight, especially those who hung around for the end. I know Mr. Bush got something about Universal City, but I want to let you know that where I was born, Springfield, Massachusetts, this is my birth town. It's not my hometown because I grew up in Providence, Rhode Island. But in 1893, the first gas-powered automobile showed up in Springfield, Massachusetts. And in 1893, gas was 7.5 cents a gallon. And as far as I know, my dad told me that I was the first baby, not 1893, to ride in an automobile in Springfield, Massachusetts. That being said, up to you.
Thank you, Mr. Neville. Appreciate it. Mr. Byrd.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Turner, thank you for the presentations tonight. Obviously, the staff has gone into has put a great deal of effort into these presentations. 128 pages for the Gibbsboro, for the PUD at Gibbsboro Road. Took me a long time to read it. I can only imagine how long it took all of us to put that together. So to you and your staff, thank you for the professional job that you guys have done in putting this all together. Randy, I see that the Parkview construction is underway. That's good news. The paving on Kitty Hawk is nearing completion towards the Cibolo crossing. So I know a lot of residents that are over there are anxiously waiting for that. So on behalf of the residents, thank you for that. A little bit of interest. I wish that I had had this city council meeting yesterday because yesterday was Talk Like a Pirate Day. Would have tucked in my whole comments as a pirate. But today, to my fellow council member, today is also National IT Professionals Day. So to Mr. Shelby, congratulations on that. It's also National Pepperoni Pizza Day. That's my favorite. That's the one I'm going to celebrate when we're done here tonight. For my Universal City history lesson, on September 8th, 1957, that's 2 days ago from 1957, the Air Training Command moved from Scott Air Force Base in Illinois to Randolph Air Force Base. This was probably the single most deciding factor in the explosion of housing and construction and interest in Universal City. So to our Air Force partners, thank you for doing that. In September of 1978, our Universal City Fire Department had a total of 6 paid members, and since we're talking about budget tonight, this is of interest. They had 6 paid members, 26 volunteers, and a whopping budget of, Mr. Shelby, care to guess?
No idea.
$125,000. That was their entire budget. Lastly, cable television was considered fully activated in Universal City on 25 September of 1979. Gave Universal City the distinction of being the first city in Bexar County to have cable television. UA Columbia Cablevision offered for $19 the overwhelming 35 channels. HBO and Showtime, of course, were extra. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is your tidbit. And yeah, and I still can't find 35 channels that I actually want to watch. Crazy. Mr. Mayor, thank you. That is my comments for this evening. I appreciate it.
Very good, very good. Bear?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To follow on what he said, I wish that it had been yesterday because unfortunately I was the only one in my office who wore the pirate hat to lunch, but it was a good time. Great meeting tonight. I just want to make sure that I cover myself properly because if I said vote for, I mean vote on a proposition. I don't mean vote for, I mean get out and vote. So I want to make sure that was clear in my head. I was thinking one thing. If I said something else, I apologize. But I'm saying go and vote on the propositions. So there you go. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Wait. Good, thank you. No.
Another green eye.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will also say vote on the bond issue. A couple of things. First off, I want to apologize for, as I'm coming stuff off my head, the use of fictitious funds. That's not what I meant. It was the possible overage of funds. We never guarantee that's what it's going to be. I used the word fictitious. That was not what I meant, and I know money is not fictitious, so please don't everybody slam me on that. Also, it is our job up here to represent all the people of Universal City. So our comments and mine were according to things that were said before, things that were brought up to me after, and just living in this city and just wanting to make sure that we have the best available what we can have for our citizens now and looking forward. And with, the city manager and the city itself is happy with the budget, and we'll go with that. And for things that I want on my wish list, and people have let me know that they want on their wish list for the future of this, then keep that in, definitely keep that in mind for next time. And maybe I ask a heck of a lot more questions and let that be known. Also, real quickly, we had our graduation for the university. The Citizens Police Academy had graduates, 12 fantastic graduates. We had our little graduation at the Gather. Everybody had a great time. One person on that graduation team could not show up because of other things that they had, pressing, and she left. That would be Kim Eaglehart. I wanted to embarrass her tonight, but she left on us. Want to present her with her graduation diploma. But we have some fantastic people that did come out of that program, and I encourage where the next one is going to start in March, as far as we know, and we'll get that out. It's a fantastic program, and looking forward to some other people that are interested on this and getting in there. But anyway, and thank you for the staff for everything you've put together as far as answering our questions, and the good, the bad, and the ugly questions, and not rolling your eyes too many times at some of the stupid questions that maybe I have put together. But anyway, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate it.
Just one interesting note for everybody. I'm going to show you a little video in a second that's related to the hotel, the Marriott, Town Suites, and they did some drone footage. And I just want to end tonight's meeting for you on a happy note. Take a look at this. I think you're going to see something very interesting. Just short and sweet, but if you hadn't had a chance to see some of the surroundings of the hotel, I think that gives you a pretty good idea. They did a nice job of showing the 14th fairway, as well as a couple of other fairways, and they showed Rotama as well. So that property is doing exceptionally well. As an extended stay, their average occupancy has been well over 50% since it opened, which is phenomenal for a motel. So I thought you'd be interested to see it, because it's kind of a nice way to show the progress that's happening, and there's lots of good potential marketing going on between the city and the Marriott, and it's very promising. So thank you everyone, all of you, for sticking around tonight. I really appreciate your hanging in there. And so this meeting is now adjourned at 9 o'clock in the evening. Thank you very much for coming. Today also is National Register to Vote Day. Not the last day you can register to vote, but it's a special day. I know you can still register for another week or so.